So guys, I'm not going to start this video off with jokes because this video is very important to me, because what's important to me is, number one on this channel, helping new entrepreneurs or veteran entrepreneurs avoid the mistakes I made in my first decade of entrepreneurship. One of the biggest mistakes that I made is interpreting what's loud to be right. And when you look at the entrepreneurship space, loudness is really the only thing that really stands out, because people that are actually doing the work, are building companies the right way, are doing the smart moves, they're in the trenches, they're working, they're not big talkers. And one of the big mistakes I made was not understanding that early on. And so whenever I'm on a live stream or I look in the comments section, I'm always being compared to people that are very loud, or I'm being asked my opinion on people that are very loud. Now, I'm not saying being loud is a sign that you're wrong, but what I'm saying is that if that's where you're looking at, you're going to miss out on such great lessons from people that really know what they're doing and really know their stuff. And while the people that I'm referencing right here, they're not being ignored, they're not being overshadowed or hiding out in the corner somewhere. However, they're not really putting their most of their effort into getting tons of attention. And the cool thing is they're often sharing what they know very freely. You just have to perk your ears up to it, because it's not going to be shoved in your face like every other form of marketing information. And so as you guys know, one of the things I love to do is go find very successful CEOs and try and learn from them by watching YouTube videos. The person I'm having on today, I've been actually watching for years. He actually whooped the crap out of one of my first SaaS companies, Market Hero. And when our companies went head-to-head, they've won. All their stats and their financial information is online at Bear Metrics. And this company is, of course, ConvertKit. And their CEO, Nathan Barry, is a person I've been watching for a long time. And I've actually been devouring all of his interviews on YouTube, because you'll see when we get into this interview how he built his company. And I think they built it so right. And it's so polar opposite to how you think most people would grow companies online. And the reason why I say this is one of the most insightful interviews I ever saw when it comes to building a company. It has 187 views. Now, of course, there's other views with Nathan that have a few thousand views and stuff like that. You really have to look for this information, because Nathan, for example, is busy working on his company, not promoting his social media brand. The results really speak for themselves. Whether you're a beginner or a veteran, there's so much in this interview that's so useful, because you can see right here, Nathan started the company with his team right here. And it took them a long time to get a lot of traction, even break 10,000 a month. And so if you're a beginner thinking, how do I start off with the SaaS company? How do I build this? They actually started it bootstrapped, without a lot of investment money, without a lot of money, in fact, to start it at all compared to most SaaS companies. And through word of mouth, manual selling, they took the company to several $100,000 a month, $1 million a month, to the point right now where it's doing $1.7 million per month. That's around over $20 million a year in annual revenue. Teachable has around the same revenue, and they just exited for $250 million. Even at a 4x multiple, this is an $80 million company. That's the low end. Very few people have ever done something like this. I can't really name anybody who's running their mouth on YouTube and constantly marketing themselves. It has results like this. And I'm not saying those people are wrong. I'm saying it's just a shame, because this information right here and learning from people like this has helped me so much. And sometimes you have to go and dig and really seek these people out and look them up and say, what does this person think about this? The way I found this information was going and Googling them, saying ConvertKit's a great company. I wonder what this guy's thinking. This has benefited me so much. And so the reason why I want to do interviews like this more often is because I want to help benefit you guys in the way that has benefited me the most. And bringing these people to you is one of the best ways I can think of that. And I think if you can find people particularly like this and listen to them, it's helped me so much. And so the best way I can help you is helping you in ways that I help myself. One other tidbit, before we get to the end of this interview, mention in the interview, you can sign up for ConvertKit for free below this. I'm not taking an affiliate link or anything like that. And I'm going to mention a link near the end of this interview so you actually watch it. And if you go through the link and get ConvertKit for free, and then send your sign-up email to the email that I will have listed, I will deliver to you a course based on email marketing, because this is one of the ways I got my start in business, that's worth over $500. So you'll just get that for free, and that's just my way of saying, hey, this is a good thing, and this will help you out, because I want to help you out. Again, that will be mentioned deep in this interview, so you actually have to watch it, take away from it. And it'll be very clear when we get to that part in the interview. So without further ado, guys, I'm super excited. I want to do this about once a week with you guys. Let's begin. Okay, guys, what is going on? So this is Nathan. Actually, you guys have seen me talk about him in the channel and live streams a lot. He's the CEO of ConvertKit. So I wanted to bring him on because, in particular, how he started ConvertKit is super interesting, and I'll let him kind of talk more about it in a sec. But it's really interesting because I learned a lot, Nathan, actually watching ConvertKit, because I had a competing company which didn't do as well as yours. It was an email market place called Market Hero. And it's really interesting to me, and I'm really excited to do the interview because we were the complete opposite. We were super ads focused, and we blew up real fast and then didn't go and hit the market fit like you guys. It took you to, I think you're close. I think you're at like a little bit past 1.7 MRR, so a little bit over 20 mil a year.
Yep.
Cool. And so, yeah, and that's basically just what I wanted to dive into. But the thing I wanted to ask you about first that I think is super interesting is because when most people start thinking about building a SaaS company or getting going or building a business, they picture, getting all this funding and millions of dollars in investments and taking this huge leap. And I was watching an interview that was really interesting to me where you were kind of working on ConvertKit as your side business. And your first goal was to get to about 5,000 MRR. And when you look at most internet marketers and especially people talking on YouTube, that seems so, compared to what you were doing in your internet marketing way, that seems almost so slow burned focus. And so could you kind of you explain how you started ConvertKit and how you decided on the idea and then how you kind of set on that 5K goal and how you went about that?
Yeah, so background's in design. So first, building websites back in high school, and then like transitioning into building web applications. And then when the iPad came out, I dove into building iOS apps. And so I got into the like online marketing, building an audience world from that blogging perspective. So some people go from like direct response marketing or these other things. I came in as a blogger teaching people how to design iPhone apps. And that's how I got into email marketing, because I wrote a book called The App Design Handbook. I had a list of 800 people on MailChimp. Like it was, really small getting going, but that book sold 12 grand worth in the first day. And I was like, wait, what? I wasn't in any of the like internet marketing communities or anything like that. I was in the blogging communities, and I was blown away that you could do that. But the other thing is, I was also blown away by the fact that email, not social, not, these other channels were driving all the sales. And I'm in Boise, Idaho, and there's kind of a old school online marketing community that's been around in Boise for a long time.
I think that's where Russell and ClickFunnels are at last.
Yep. And ClickBank is here, bodybuilding.com, like a bunch
That's
of
the
people.
old school. That's the old school of old school.
Yeah. A bunch of people who have been doing it for a long time. And I was talking to my friend Ron, who is here. He's done online marketing and all that since like 2002, maybe. And I was talking to him. I was like, "Hey, email marketing, like it's working. It's converting better than social and everything else." He's like, "Dude, we have known that for like more than a decade at this point. Like, congratulations! Like you've caught up to us. Good job. That's what everybody's doing." And so I just became fascinated with learning all of the best practices for, offering lead magnets and incentives to grow a list, tagging your subscribers, segmenting and all that. And in that process, I basically realized that MailChimp was not going to work. So I was pretty frustrated with having to write custom code and all of that. Being a designer and developer, I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a bunch of custom code to build in these best practices. And that's kind of when I thought, okay, what if I built a tool that's not for the broader market, right? It's not for all of small business or everybody. Instead, it's just for starting out, bloggers like me who are looking to sell products and build an audience, and has some of those best practices built in by default. So that was the start in the early days. My books, I went from making very little money from iPhone apps, say like $3,000 to $5,000 a month, iPhone apps, to then when I got into self-publishing books, I was making more like $25,000 a month.
That was actually one of the more interesting things of your story that you told, because there was a point where you're doing very, very well from these books, and you had started ConvertKit from kind of your email experience, and then you really had to make the choice from almost taking a downgrade in income to make this leap of faith into that. And so one thing I always talk about on the channel is like how hard it is to pick one thing, because that has destroyed me almost my last decade. I'd focus on 10 projects at a time. How did you obviously built ConvertKit out of your interest in the email. How did you decide this is the one thing I want to do?
Yeah. So I tried to do multiple things for a long time. Right. If you talk to somebody, I feel like so many people are like, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Oh, you have one business? I have 11.
Yeah. Like same thing with me forever.
And so I thought that like that's what great entrepreneurs did. They had a lot of businesses. They always had a bunch of things going, and they were diversified and whatever else. I finally had to come to the realization that that may work for them. It does not work for me.
Yeah.
I am a one thing type of person, or I can do one thing and then have like a little side project or a little hobby thing or whatever. But I need to be focused on one thing. It took me a long time to come around to that idea. So I had the books and courses that I was selling that was doing well. I built up my own email list, not to anything crazy, but I think it was about 20,000 people on my email list over a couple of years. So basically, if we fast forward, I started ConvertKit January of 2013. So I was 22 years old, had a small audience, and was earning a living, through books and courses. If you fast forward 18 months, ConvertKit was making not even $2,000 a month, and the books and courses were doing well.
Yeah.
But like I had this problem where it wasn't even paying like its server bills and development costs and that sort of thing. And a friend of mine named Heaton Shaw, who, if you ever played with tools like Kissmetrics or Crazy Egg,
Yeah.
Flow Bar, like Heaton's done a lot of cool stuff. His current project is called FYI. We were at a conference walking back from the speaker's dinner, and he like just kind of pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey man, ConvertKit is not working out. Like, you're 18 months into the project. It's making, you had a goal of getting to $5,000 a month. You didn't hit that. It's making less than the peak. Like, it's declining. You've been successful at lots of other things. You'll be successful again at other projects and ventures. But like, this isn't it. Shut it down. Move on." And I distinctly remember like walking down the street in Las Vegas, and he stopped to tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he like concludes his thought and keeps walking again. And I like still stood there for a second, like, what? Because I remember thinking that it's not a nice thing to say to somebody. Like, hey, this project that you love and care about, like, yeah, shut it down. It's not working. And then when I caught back up to him, and I was only like 5 or 10 steps behind him, but then he goes like, or you could take it seriously and give it the time, money, and attention it deserves. Stop treating it as a side project and like actually make it happen. But this middle ground of like, oh, I'm working on the side while I do these other things and all that, it's just not working. And so, the gist of the message was shut it down or double down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was exactly what I needed to hear, because I realized that I was not the person who could multitask and work on a ton of different ventures.
That was like one big realization I had. Actually, like, I didn't have this all the way back in 2013. I had this back like a year and a half ago, because I was working on my SaaS product. I had a supplement company, and then I have like my internet marketing guru company. And the SaaS company that was most important part, I never was able to go all in on it, because I was like, well, the guru company is doing really well, and like this project's working. So I could never really allow myself to take that leap of faith and like kind of deal with the fear that came with it, and jumping down. So how did you I think a lot of people, when they're deciding to get started in internet marketing, or maybe they're getting into blogging or something, they have that trouble going all in on something. And at this time, this wasn't your big income earner. So how did you get past the mental block, allowing you to just go, I'm going to go all in on this project, even though it isn't my top earner right now?
Yeah, well, there's two ways to think about it. One is like, what's the potential upside? If this works out to maybe not the wildest best case possible scenario, mm-hmm. but like I'd still be blown away, right? And the internet marketing side of it, so for me, the books and courses, if this does really, really well, like the absolute best I ever expected it to, I could see targeting, say, $500,000 to $1 million a year in revenue. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's plenty of people who have built like audience-based course, downloadable products, all that businesses to much larger than that. But it starts to get really difficult.
Yeah, 100%.
Whereas like on the SaaS side, if I'm like, okay, if this, and I didn't even have this level of goals then, but I knew, okay, if this works out really well, then it could be $100,000 a month. It could be $200,000 a month. And actually, what I was thinking back then is, okay, if I could build this into something that I could sell, the multiples on SaaS are really good. And so the potential upside was way, way higher. And so there's way more leverage. Now I think of everything in terms of leverage. Back then I didn't know to do that. Um, the other side of like the shut it down or double down decision, which I think we come to on a lot of projects. I broke down into basically a two-part, like a two-question framework. The first question is, do I still want this as much today as the day that I started? Right? Because we dive in and there's all kinds of energy and excitement and all of that around, oh, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to do this project, start this YouTube channel, whatever. And then like a week later or a month later or a year later, it's like, okay, I'm not working off of motivation anymore. And so then you're stuck, like, should I shut this down or double down on it? It's like, well, okay, do I still want this? The answer is yes, I still want it just as much as the day that I started. Then like, great, okay, proceed to question number 2. If the answer is like, no, I thought it'd be cool, but it's actually not, then like shut it down and move on in good conscience. But if you still want it, which I did with ConvertKit, I still wanted to run a software company. I wanted to get into recurring revenue rather than one-off revenue. And so I was like, okay, question number 2 is, have I given this every possible chance to succeed? Like, have I really given it my best effort? Because if you really want it and you've given it your best effort and it's not working, then like you can shut it down and in good faith move on, right? You won't have these lingering doubts in the future. But for me, I knew that I really wanted it, and I'd put in half-time effort, money and that kind of thing. And I knew that if I shut ConvertKit down at that point, I would always wonder, could I have made that work? And that was not something that I was willing to live with. And so I saw that it was basically hypocritical of me to say, I really want this, and I'm going to half-ass the effort. And so I basically decided that for me to feel good about, myself and my commitment to projects and all of that, I had to give it a real shot. And so that's why I decided to double down on ConvertKit.
Yeah, I saw you tell that story in an interview that I was watching. And it's a really small one, so I had to like dig deep to find this one. I was like, that's kind of the trial by fire I had to go through, because I was doing those 10 different things. I had to think to myself, am I actually going to go all in this and give it my best shot or not? And then over 10 years, can I look back at it? So you guys went and you grew this kind of, from the interview that I watched, you guys did some launches and traditional kind of internet marketing stuff. But I don't think when you guys were originally growing it, you bought many ads. I don't know if you buy many ads this day, really.
We didn't buy any ads.
Yeah, and so you were able to scale it. I mean, I'm looking at the Baremetrics numbers, and just by the way, if you're watching this, I think you're the only company that I know that shares all their numbers online. I think there's other ones, but
yeah,
it grew.
ConvertKit.baremetrics.com, you'll see our public dashboard.
Yeah,
and so if you go to baremetrics.com/open, you'll see about a dozen other companies that do it.
Yeah, and I remember when you guys really started to pick up pace. I'm not sure if it was the time, but Pat Flynn, he did an interview with you and you started promoting it. But the big change was really August 15 to around August 16. You guys went from, if I'm reading this, from 15 to that, you went from 18,000 a month MRR to over 400,000 a month, or around that, over 300,000 a month. Definitely, I'm just bad at reading charts.
Yeah.
I from watching and studying your company, it seems like the driving force behind that was really almost word of mouth and almost organically. I mean, I don't think you guys were fueling that with ads. What was the? Okay, so obviously you guys nailed this with product market fit, and I believe originally you were going, and you did it manually first, and you did everything the slow way, and you just worked with the customer, and you worked with the customer, and you worked with the customer. Can you kind of explain how you went from your manual process first off, but then how you really listened to the customer and nailed exactly what they wanted? Because I've never seen a company that I know of off the top of my hand do what you guys did. And that's one of the reasons I want to interview. I've never seen a company grow this well and so healthy.
Right.
And it's only done by really listening to the customer. And so what was kind of your process to listen to the customer and choosing what to develop? And I know I'm filling in a lot of blanks here. I just want to get as much interviewing as possible, because you almost had limited development costs. I believe your hard cost was about $9,000 to $13,000 a month. And so you really had to snipe the features that you needed. How did you listen to the customer and develop that and get such a strong product market?
Yeah. So the first thing is, it came from a conversation that I had with another Saas founder. And I think we were at like maybe 2,000 a month in revenue at the time that I had this conversation. And they had gone they had a public post about going from 2,000 in MRR to 50,000 in MRR in 12 months. And I was blown away. Like, that was just incredible results. And so I thought, I was at a conference. And so I asked him across the table, like, okay, how did you do that? He said, oh, it was all word of mouth. And I remember thinking, like, oh, word of mouth. Like, why didn't I just think to like pull the word of mouth lever? Like, I tried everything else, but I forgot to use that tactic,
Exactly what I did.
And just thinking, like, it's kind of useless advice, because how do you even do that? And everybody says, oh, they grew by word of mouth. And so I got really frustrated coming out of that conversation, because I didn't know how to do that. But what I realized is that it requires getting this initial traction. And so what we did is what I did was I turned to direct sales at that point, and went after a very specific niche. And so instead of being like email marketing for, I don't even remember how I defined it, we narrowed specifically and like owned the market for email marketing for professional bloggers. And then I would do a lot of cold outreach to get people to switch. And I'd go into even like a very specific niche. So like, I'd look at the few customers that we did have that were successful. One of them was a men's fashion blogger in New York. Another was a paleo recipe blog. And so when I did my cold outreach, I would go specifically to a very narrow market. So not just professional bloggers, but professional paleo recipe bloggers who are women, or men's fashion bloggers in New York. Because then you get down to a list that's so tiny, right? It's 25 people maybe.
Yeah, you can really have a good subject line with that.
Yeah, and I can reach out to them. And then when I name drop who's using ConvertKit, so the email would look like this, hey, so-and-so, I saw that you're using MailChimp, and I was wondering, is there anything that's frustrating you about MailChimp? The reason I ask is I run an email marketing company for professional bloggers called ConvertKit, and we're used by, and I would name drop the 3 most relevant people. So if my paleo recipe blogger, and then 2 other customers that I thought there might be a chance they would have heard of. Thanks so much for your time, Nathan. So it's super short. And basically what happened is I get a pretty good response rate, maybe 30 to 40%, because it called out which email provider they were using. And they'd come back and say, oh, this is what I'm frustrated with, right? I can't tag subscribers. I have duplicates across lists. It's hard to do content upgrades. And so then I'd go, okay, that's actually like, I had the exact same, like I genuinely had the exact same frustrations with MailChimp. And that's why I started ConvertKit. And so then I could try to, like, from there, get them on a call, talk through the problems with them. And then probably the most important thing is they would say, like, okay, this is great, I love it. Oh, but actually I'm not going to switch. It's too much work. And so what I would do, and because they were right, it's a pain to switch email tools.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is say, okay, I will do it for you for free. So, in order to get $50 in MRR, $100 in MRR, I would get access to their site. I would, so WordPress, FTP, their MailChimp or Aweber account or whatever. And I would go in there, I would switch everything over to ConvertKit. I would set up, improve any processes as it went along. Because I also had a bit of a reputation, right, as like starting to be an expert in this space. And so I'd like throw in basically free consultation as well in order to get this, $50 or $100 of MRR. And that worked really well. And so in January of 2015, we were at 2,000 in MRR. By June, we were at, by May, it was 5,000. By June, it was 10. And then in July, we started to land some bigger accounts. So on one side, actually we had a single day that went from 10,000 to 15,000 in MRR. Pat Flynn signed up. And that was through, I flew to San Diego, met with him, and we'd met at a conference and stuff before. But then a popular health and wellness blog called Wellness Mama signed up. And then we got I think it was a barbecue blog that had 100,000 email subscribers all on the same day. So we grow by 50% in one day. And I was like, okay, this is great. And then, so around that time, that's when we started having enough traction that every sale I made the next sale
Mm-hmm.
easier. Because now in that name dropping list, I could list, actually I couldn't list Pat Flynn yet. He wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
let me until we like had good traction and the migration went really well and all that. But then we started to get people asking Pat, like, okay, what tool are you using? Asking
Mm-hmm.
Wellness Mama what tool they were using. And so by September, October, like the word of mouth was starting to kick in and this was really working. And so in July, we were at 15,000. And by December, we hit 98,000 MRR.
Yeah. And I just, so when I was growing my email company, because I've been an email, only email for so long. And so I was kind of growing it kind of sort of the same time you were, but the reason why I think your approach was so cool is because it's so polar opposite than what people think and how I thought. I considered myself a real good marketer, and my strategy was ads. And we'd have like 18,000 subscriptions, and we'd be sending all these customers in, but we didn't have the stick. And it didn't hit me like, wait, you have this completely backwards. You need to go back and do things the slow way and work with the customer and nail what they need and then go from there. And it just kind of shows, and if you're watching this right here, if you look at YouTube or you look at how people they talk about growing their businesses, it's always the big sexy things. It's never work with the customer, do the manual things. And if you look at a lot of really good SaaS companies like yours, like it's like the definition of that, you did things manually first and then it grew from there so quickly. And so I just think that's so cool.
Well, yeah, it worked really well for us, but it ends up being also incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
And there's a Gail Goodman who started Constant Contact.
Mm-hmm.
She gave a business of software talk, right? In Constant Contact, people can make fun of them for being old school or whatever else, but like they built the industry, you know, them and Aweber, I guess, really. You know, she talks about what she calls the long, slow SaaS ramp of death. I think that's the title of the talk.
Yeah, I watched that talk way back when.
Yeah, and it's like just how long it took them to get to meaningful revenue, right? And they sold for over $1 billion, so they ended up being massively successful. But it just took so long to get going, and that's how ConvertKit was as well. Of like really trying to talk to every customer, nail product market fit, set every customer up manually, understand what it is that they need, you know, redesign features to match that. And I mean, I wish it went faster, but that's the thing. Yeah. Now it's like
yeah, over 10 years, it's the most profitable thing. Month to month, it doesn't look good at all. And if you're going off kind of the normal hype train of marketing that's going on, you think you're doing something wrong. Almost when that's like if you look at all the best companies, that's their growth. So the other questions I have here are really interesting and kind of more greedy focused on my part, because I want to know what you're thinking. Yeah. So I have a SaaS company right now. We're at about 200,000 a month, but obviously when you guys got to around 200,000 a month, it's slingshot to, I believe, almost $1 million a month within about a year and a half's time.
Yeah.
So how has your job as CEO changed? Or I think the better question is like, you go from this point where you kind of know what you're doing and you kind of used to the marketing, you know how it's going to work, and then you jump into this pool where you're scaling for maybe 100K a month and past that, where it's just a complete, you've never been there before. And there aren't very many people that have experience going from that level. If you look at SaaS companies that go from 100,000 to $1 million a month,
yeah,
there's a lot of those companies, but not in the grand scheme of people. You know, it's very few people even understand what's supposed to happen or how it's supposed to look at that point. How did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, that stage of the company was definitely just trying to keep up with everything. It was the most hectic time in the company. So, for example, I remember that first summer, that we actually had a real team, right? Because in 2015, it was like me and a couple of contractors and one full-time guy, you know, but then the end of 2015, we started hiring. And by summer of 2016, I remember we had our first team retreat. We had 21 people on the team, a little over 200,000 a month in revenue. And we, you know, of those 21 people, we'd hired 5 in the previous month and a half, you know, like that's when we were really trying to go fast, and staying profitable the whole time. Right. This is all customer money. But I remember like we were getting attacked by spammers. We had that first team retreat. We were supposed to go paddleboarding down the river, and like for the people who had flown in early. And I remember all the engineers, which there were 5 at the time, 2006, ended up in a coffee shop trying to just keep the app online because we were getting a
I have
denial.
the funniest story in relation to that. I have to tell you. So St. Patrick's Day, I think 2016 or 2017, me and my CEO were on a float, pretty drunk. And I can relate to you with the delivery and spammers. And so that day we're going down it. JD gets a text message. It says, okay, so Google just blocked all your IPs because of the spammers. And so literally everything is days there. And so we're like running back to the house. No. And so the same exact thing happened to us. Delivery is no joke.
Yeah. And this, basically we had these spammers that we were fighting, and
they're smart. They find all sorts of ways to sign up, and
they did everything. Yeah. And they would do things on the weekends, late at night on the weekends when they knew we weren't paying attention. So they would find something to exploit, and then they would test it just enough to make sure that it would work. And then they would wait until, like a bunch of us were on a plane. And of course we're working in public, right? We're sharing things on Twitter. We're like, that's just who we are as a company. And so we're like, okay, headed on the team retreat. And they're like, oh yes.
Perfect.
And then we blocked a bunch of it and pissed them off. And they ran a denial of service attack as a retaliation. And so like the app's going down and all this stuff. So that whole time period, like that summer, was just us trying to like keep up, like keep the app online. Customer support was a serious problem. Actually, that retreat, we did a lot of just all hands customer support. It was less than ideal, but we were still growing like crazy.
Cool. So how did you, what was kind of your strategy to maintain the customer experience? Because one thing I'm kind of struggling with right now, so once you start getting a lot of customers, it's really easy when you're doing it kind of manually and you're able to work with the customer. How would you maintain a really good customer experience and make the sign up, from my point of view, the only way to really grow that sign up is to make it so most people don't have to start a ticket when they sign up. How would you keep the customer experience high? How do you make people, when they sign in, go, I get it? And keep the quality super high, and because you guys have very low churn, and so obviously people are seeing they're getting it and they're constantly continuing to pay.
I would one, use the tool a lot, like as a customer. So this is where it's helpful that, right, I still have a blog, I still have this stuff going, not in the same way that I don't really sell like courses and other products like I used to, but I still have a reason to use ConvertKit as a customer. And I really encourage, I actually just did a tweet thread on this yesterday. A lot of companies like discourage side hustles or side projects. They want their, all their team to be 100% focused on work. And we actually encourage side projects because we want, so if one of our engineers wants to start a blog, or our designer has her name's Charlie, she has a popular YouTube channel. Well, we really encourage that because then they end up using the tool as a customer.
That's really interesting.
So they go through it and they're like, oh, this is annoying. And then they go fix that thing. And so you can't always, well, I guess, try to use the tool as a customer as absolutely as much as possible. And then just spend as much time talking to customers as possible. So now we're down to doing about 10 customer calls a month, between me and my director of product, or product manager. So 10 to 15 a month. But then we also use a tool called Full Story that records the whole screen. So as someone's using the tool, I can have an event that fires so that if they encounter a certain flow that I'm trying to improve, then it records that whole session. And I can go back and watch all their interactions, what I type in and everything there, and I can see where they got stuck. For example, I have this flow for, now that ConvertKit is a free plan, I have this flow that lets people build a landing page before they even create an account. And the conversion rate on that isn't quite as high as I want. So I turn on Full Story to watch that. And so now I can see, okay, where are people dropping off? What exactly?
You can watch them clicking around and building it and seeing where they're getting confused.
Yep, exactly. So I see like, okay, people are like, you're watching, you're like, you're trying to add an image there. Okay. That's not obvious how to do that. And so then when you see them cancel out and not actually create an account, you're like, okay, you had a frustrating experience. So it's really paying close attention to that. A lot of talking to customers. And then, just a lot of manually fixing stuff for customers. And then that thing that they ran into, it's like, okay, now let's fix it in an automated way for everyone else.
I see. Okay, cool. So another big one. So obviously your job as CEO at 12K or 5K MRR, and then your job as CEO at a million a month MRR. How has that changed? What have you had to do differently? Just to kind of phrase the question better, I've had to, I'm not near the level you are, but I've had to go from being like the do it all to, you know,
Right.
looking at the product, working with engineers, buying the ads and everything, to the point where I have to really put this in other people's hands and almost be more of a coach. I can't really do much. I'm almost useless unless I'm acting through other people. How have you changed as a CEO, and how has your job changed as the leader of the company?
Well, yeah, I mean, I for sure had to do that all across the board. And I think that's the advice, right? You have to get, as you grow the organization, and if you want a well-run organization, you have to have people in each category of, working on each thing. What I've done instead, because I've like almost entirely done that, but I've kept a hold of what we call our product organization. So we've got customer success, operations, engineering, marketing, and then product. And so product is our designers, and it's what we're building, the product strategy, and all of that. And so I wear two hats at ConvertKit. One is CEO, and the other is director of product. So I kind of strangely, like if you look at our org chart, it doesn't, like I exist on it in two places.
Yeah.
And so probably, like if I followed the best advice, it would be to hire the best person in each area. And what I basically decided is I did that in every area except for product design, because I feel like that's what I'm uniquely good at. And so I'm still very hands-on in that. So maybe in your case, for example, maybe you're hiring someone, a good leader in engineering, a good leader in design and product, a really good leader in customer success, but you're like marketing, that's the area where I think I'm uniquely good at, or whatever that is. And like that part that gives you energy and all that. So I've like that advice that everybody gives of like, okay, I'm going to take that 90% of the way.
Yeah.
And then this thing that I love and I think I'm uniquely good at, I'm going to go all in on that.
No, that makes perfect sense. What I started noticing as it started to grow is I was actually like ruining certain parts of the company because like just playing to my weaknesses. How did you kind of identify like what things you shouldn't touch, and how did you kind of learn those lessons?
Yeah. I'm not a systems person.
Yeah, me
At
too.
all.
Yeah.
Like I am we will get this done through sheer force of will kind of
Yeah, and
person.
it's never the best solution long term, but it works. But yeah.
So one is identifying that. And so hiring people that help balance that out. Like now we have some really great data-driven systems thinkers who the best solution is probably halfway between what they think and what I think, and so we blend really well there. But I would find myself doing, like Paul Graham talks about, do things that don't scale.
Yeah.
And I am all about that. But I would take it too far. And so on customer support, I would be like, if we get behind on tickets, I would be pushing, okay, let's just put in a big heroic effort and let's get, that taken care of. So bringing in someone who, probably in customer support and engineering were the two biggest impact ones, where we bring in leaders who put systems in place and bring stability, and they're tweaking knobs and dials, right, to get it dialed in, rather than like, oh, we're behind, let's just put in this huge effort.
Yeah, I feel like I feel I'm not 100%, but you seem kind of more like a creative CEO, and so like I'm a creative CEO is chaos, and then you have you have to bring in people that are order, and they almost like I'm constantly fighting with my COO because I'm constantly just these messes that I create. Like yesterday, literally, I was like, okay, we're just going to have like an Excel sheet to pay our sales reps. And he's like, and then there's all this confusions between the sales reps and all these things, and so I totally relate to that. What things did you in particular ignore when you were scaling up the company that turned into big problems that you didn't think would be big problems? What kind of cars came out of left field and T-boned you?
I mean, spam and deliverability was definitely one of them. That's an area of the industry that's so opaque when you're coming in. You're just like, I don't know, you send the email and it shows up in your inbox. And then you spend a bunch of time in the industry and you're like,
oh, that's the best way to describe email delivery. Oh,
yeah. And then you're like, oh, we'll outsource it to a Mailgun or a SendGrid. And like, the truth is that only works at a certain scale. Like, you still have to have your internal team. Payments fraud would be another one.
Yeah.
Like, we don't even process payments like for people selling products. We just process our own payments, and we've had spammers and fraud get on there. Actually, we were hosting, this was the second year of our conference. So like, me and my COO Barrett, we met at a conference. Like, so much of our networks comes from great conferences, so we always wanted to run our own. So we did. And I remember the conference is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And on the Friday, like, everything's kicking off, all of that. And I'm getting a call from a friend who works at Stripe. And he's like, dude, like, why are you not responding to our emails? And I'm like, what emails? Because Stripe had been sending automated emails for different things.
It's never good when you get personal emails from Stripe. Never a good thing.
Like, stuff had been like, your export is available, like all this stuff. And I had just filtered all emails from Stripe out of my email. And the emails that had been coming is like, hey, you're on Visa's like watch list or whatever. You're escalated this. And they're like, Visa is going to shut you down. Like, it's not even with Stripe now, but like, Visa is going to shut you down and ban Stripe from processing the payment. So I'm like at the conference in the lobby, like, taking this call. And basically what had happened is people have been using spammers have been, or not even spammers, people have been using ConvertKit for credit card testing, and then loading those credit cards, those numbers, and going and buying stolen goods with them. And then that had resulted in a bunch of chargebacks. And
it's so weird how those little weird things pop. That never happened to us, but we had a similar problem, and like how people use your credit card form. I think that happened to me now that I think about it. I'm not going to give the exact date, but a bunch of months ago, I looked at it, I'm like, oh, we had like 10,000 charges a day. Maybe we're blowing up or something. It was all just, I bet they were testing the credit card forms and the credit cards. And
so those would be a couple of things. I'm trying to think what else. Definitely scaling an infrastructure. And then I would say we ran into another problem, maybe even say last year, like a year ago. We kind of hit, well, I think you'll see this a lot. And I wish I would know who to cite on this, who I learned it from. But basically, growth is very rarely a linear thing or an exponential curve. It's usually a bunch of stacked S curves, right? So it's slow at first, and then you hit this inflection point, and then that whatever you were doing, maybe you're still growing in absolute dollars more than you were before, but like your percentage growth really levels off. And then you're figuring out, okay, what's the next thing? How do we stack another S curve on top of that? And so we basically got to the point, and we're still at that now, where instead of like growing a faster percentage every month or maintaining, say, like a 4 or 5% monthly growth rate, the percentage growth rate was declining, and the fixed dollar amounts, like 35K net new MRR, 40K net new MRR, is where we just kept delivering that like clockwork. And so basically, we're in that leveling off part of the S curve. And so that was a big thing to try to figure out, okay, what's the best strategy there? Do we need to spend more on ads? Do we need to change what we're doing with affiliates? All of that. And what we came to there is going and launching a free plan. And so we basically decided that before the next recession, we wanted to have a free plan up and running, so that as people are losing their jobs, trying something new, they would start that new thing on ConvertKit, and
that's
then
smart.
grow with them. And so we set that goal in February of last year, and we launched that free plan January 1st of this year. And I was like, yes, we got it in before the next recession. We're good. We probably have like 6 months to get it dialed in, maybe a year to get it dialed in. And then like 10 weeks later, the economy's in the tank, and we have a quarantine and everything. So it ended up working out well. It hasn't hit our revenue yet, but we went from, a few hundred signups a day to now with the free plan, we're running over 800 to 900 new accounts a day.
And awareness and everything, I think, would like just from my, I think would just over time compound on itself, kind of like how you guys do with the word of mouth.
Yep.
I would
Yeah.
think.
And so we paid a lot of attention to MailChimp in their early days, because basically when they launched their free plan is when they blew up. And so that's like the next thing that we're trying. We don't know yet how it'll pay off on the revenue side, but we feel like we have enough scale and everything to be able to support a free plan while still being a bootstrap company.
Okay, cool. That's super interesting. The other thing I was wondering, so as the company grows, you're bringing in all sorts of new people, and the way you have to interact with your team works. And then you also might find that, and I'm just asking like 5 questions back to back here, so we can take one at a time. But you might find that the people you started with aren't the best people at the at the blitz scaling level. For like example, certain people will work at the startup level, and then when you're scaling, it goes there. I think the first question would be, how do you keep your culture intact as your company is growing like that and so many people are coming in?
Yeah. So the culture, the biggest thing, well, I would question whether you should keep your culture intact. Like that's the first thing.
Okay, that's really. Can you expand on that? That's really interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of companies don't have a good culture, and they always talk about wanting to preserve their culture. And it's like, well, okay, what do you want to preserve about it? I don't know. Our culture is just, it's great. And like, okay, what makes it great? I don't know. Like they don't actually know what parts of the culture they want to handle. So or want to continue. So the first thing is like defining what that means. So for me, I believe that culture is trust. The culture that I want to build is a culture of trust. And that's the single most defining factor. It's not the ping pong tables. It's not the free lunch. It's not any of those things. And we're a remote company, so we don't have any of that anyway. But
yeah.
So what I want to build is an environment of trust where I trust you to execute on your job, get it done, make whatever happen. You trust me to stay out of your way, give you clear feedback, not micromanage. That direct feedback is really important. I trust that you care about me enough that if there's something that needs to be said, you're going to say it. That way I don't have to spend any time like speculating. I wonder what Alex actually thinks.
Yeah, that's huge.
Like he said this, but did he mean that? Like he said this needs like to improve the design in these 3 ways, but maybe he actually meant like that. And I don't think you're a good designer. Like you can spend so much time in your head doing that. It's, if you build a culture of trust, you can accelerate so many things. The next one for us would be transparency. Like the amount of time that people spend thinking, should I have negotiated more when I accepted that salary? Am I being paid the same as she is? As we do the same work? Should I be asking for a raise right now? Is the company healthy? We're hitting a downturn. Are we going to have layoffs? All of that. And so we run everything, salaries. We have a standardized system so that everybody's paid the same for the same work. We have, we run open books. So all our financials are public within the company, and all of our revenue numbers are public outside the company as well. So people can see exactly what the health of the company is, how much cash we have on hand, where the cash is going. And then the last thing, it would be a culture of ownership. So we have, everyone in the company has equity. That's something that I didn't do early on. And then in 2018, I did, and I went back and gave equity to the team members. And then we also have profit sharing. So 60% of all the profit in the company is distributed to the team in the form of profit sharing. So 40% goes to owners, 60% goes to the team. And so when it comes to individual decisions, like one of my favorite examples is one of our engineers left was playing around with a new server on AWS. They spun it up, they tried some stuff out, and they accidentally left it running. And that ended up costing like $2,000 for the month. Now, at the time, our AWS bill was like $40,000 a month. So it was not a huge percentage, but still $2,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when it was found, the team on one hand was like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's totally fine. Shut it down. Don't worry about it. But also, that's our money. Please don't do that again.
Yeah. That's super interesting.
And it was this right balance of like, everything's fine and this culture of ownership. And so those are the things like that we've defined about our culture that we want to maintain. And as you alluded to, there's a lot of people that are right for one phase of the company that are not right for the next phase. And
how do you handle that? What is your strategy with that? Because that must lead to a lot of painful or weirdness. I'd assume with your culture of trust and being honest, I assume that some of that might actually be counted out since everything's on the table. But how did you deal with that, almost emotionally as well as business wise at the same time? You know?
Yeah. So one simple strategy thing that I did is I didn't inflate anyone's title coming in. So I've always gone with director of whatever instead of CMO, CTO, that kind of thing. And what that enables me to do is later on, if I need, like if I have a director of engineering and we scale to a certain point, and now I need someone who's led a team from 10 to 50 people rather than 0 to 10, I can hire a VP of engineering. It's still going to feel like a demotion, right? But I don't have to take away that title, or I can hire a CTO as an example.
Okay. Super.
And so just very recently, I'm making the shift as I'm promoting some of my directors. I just promoted the first one from director of customer success to VP of customer success, because he's operating on that level. He's proven it. And I know that, he's the right person to scale the team.
Okay, cool. No, that's something that's been on my mind a lot. So as the time's kind of winding down, I just had 3 questions. And the last one's kind of, the third to last one, if I have my numbers right. So obviously your company's blown up. You guys have had a lot of financial success. And a lot of times with companies, or especially the founder with financial success, comes a lot of slippery slopes with ego, a lot of distractions in your life. And so one thing I've noticed with ConvertKit, you guys have stayed about the customer. You guys have really stayed true to your roots. You personally seem like you've just kept a cool head, kept it about the team. How have you had any problems with that, or how do you kind of stop yourself from being distracted or getting a big head? Both are very subtle things that will slip into a person's life. How have you attacked that, honestly? Because you do have a lot to be proud of that could also transfer into all those things.
Yeah. Well, I think first I have a good number of people in my life to keep everything grounded and to keep me grounded. So 2 in particular would be Ashley, who's our director of operations. She's been with us for 4 years now. She was one of the early team members. Like, she actually took the chaotic mess. We didn't even have an LLC set up when she came on, and she took all in. But she's also one of my really good friends, and she's just one of those people who's like, no matter how successful, like ConvertKit could be $100 million a year, and she still wouldn't let me get a big head, And then also my wife Hillary just doesn't even care about any of this.
Yeah.
Just not even. It's one of those things. She appreciates that we don't have to, worry about what's in the cost when we go to the grocery store or go out to eat or anything like that. But she just otherwise doesn't care. And so that's really good. And then I think also a lot of the, so I guess I would say that's who you surround yourself with, right? And then there's lifestyle things, right? I live on a 4.5 acre farm in Boise, Idaho. And so we do hobbies outside of work isn't I don't know, driving incredible cars or whatever else. It's I'm building a tiny house right now. I have my wood shop. I have playing soccer with my kids and all of that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. I have run into some things of where things get a bit weirder with money when people realize just how valuable ConvertKit is, or just how much cash it's putting off, or that kind of thing. But probably the biggest thing that helps is just to put some actual numbers to it. So ConvertKit pays us personally, because we reinvest most of it, but pays us personally just under $1 million a year. But we live on more like 175,000 a year, and the rest just goes into investments and all of that. And in Boise, 175,000 a year is a ton of money. And so we don't have anything showy or flashy.
And that, I think that gives you just, because I think it's really just confusing to a lot of entrepreneurs in general, because usually the entrepreneurs who everybody talks about or looks about are the talkers and the showers. And that they, in my point of view, and what I learned is a hard lesson to myself, I've made all these mistakes that I talk about. is that actually takes away your power to be a good CEO and run a good company, because then you can't be reckless with your company, kind of like when you were starting and where you're at right now, because the money goes back into it. The power is just kept in the company. And so you can really be brave and do a lot of things. Whereas a person that's doing all the things that I just mentioned, like me in the past, it takes away your power to be a strong CEO. So the more you try and seem like a strong, successful person, actually the weaker it is. So it's just a weird thing. I just had two other questions.
Really
What'd
quick
you say?
on that. I would read, if you're at the point where you're starting to generate more and more profits and you're like, where should this money go? Because I've definitely found like, wait, what? Should I keep this much money in a bank account?
Yeah.
Like, where should I invest it? What should I do? Should I spend it on, I don't know, an airplane? Who knows? And I would read Warren Buffett's The Snowball, because he's just that person who's just constantly taking that money, reinvesting into the next thing. And, he obviously, at one point became the richest man in the world because of that strategy. So when he had an extra $100,000, he didn't go out and buy some fancy car. He went out and bought a share in another company and let that compound over time. And there will be a time, like, I don't want to pretend that I live like a pauper's life or something like that. Because I have my Tesla Model S, but that's about as showy as I'm going to get, And so I've just taken that approach of reinvesting the money and putting it to work rather than spending it on consumption type things that I have to maintain.
Awesome. I would have like 50 more questions on that, but I wanted to get the last two.
Yeah.
So obviously it took a lot of bravery and jumping into it, especially when you're starting ConvertKit, because that's what I found so impressive about when you started the company, because it was at 2K MRR. And you really went all in. Like, I waited until my company was doing other numbers, and I was a real weenie about it, if I could describe it right. So what would you tell a beginner entrepreneur who's worried about taking that leap of faith? I think you could almost recap what you said at the beginning, but what would you tell a beginner entrepreneur right now?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is to show up consistently. Like, I think we often show up in a way, like we show up in sprints. We're going to start a new business. I'm going to work on it every day for like a week or a month or something like that. Or I'm going to work on it every Saturday for a couple months. And I'm like, why didn't this take off? And so we have a value inside ConvertKit of create every day. And then my friend Sean McCabe phrased this in a way that I really like, of show up every day for at least 2 years. Because that's how long it's going to take to get any kind of meaningful traction.
Yeah.
And if there's a project that you're starting, you're like, 2 years, that's way too long. It's like, okay, well, then that's probably the wrong project for you to start. Like, stick to your day job. And the other thing is, I would say these days it doesn't have to take huge risks. I think you can keep your day job and build something on the side. And then once it gets to that $1,000 a month, or the first 1,000 email subscribers, or the first 10,000 subscribers, like, then you can decide to go all in on it. I think where I ran into trouble, and other people can, is like trying to have 3 or 4 main things and pretending that they're all equal. But if you're like putting in your work at your day job, and then you have that creative energy that you're channeling into one side project that you plan for it to become the main thing, that's what I would do. And I wouldn't take the approach of like, burn the ships and go all in until you're certain.
Cool. So the other final question, kind of more of me just sneaking in one for myself. What would you tell a SaaS founder who's in a position where they're about to start scaling? Because obviously that's a big shift from the startup mode to the scale mode. What warnings would you give?
I would say really focus on culture. I would say those people who were good for the initial phase, you already know who they are that aren't going to make it at the next phase of the company. And now's the time to have those frank conversations. And then you can give them time to either level up, or you can manage them out and let them go, in a kind but direct way. With that, Brene Brown, who I really love, all of her work, she has this phrase of clear is kind. And so, I'd say like really emphasize that clear feedback. I would say still talk to customers, like talk to customers even more. There's a CEO who I really like, Jason Lemkin, who runs Saaster. and he's great on Twitter, dropping
Mm-hmm.
these little one-liner things and all that. But he's always saying, basically providing a good reminder to me of like, talk to customers. He phrases it as like, get on the plane, go meet them in person, make that happen. And so I would say, when was the last time you sat down with your top 20 customers, really emphasize them, ask them, okay, who else should I be talking to? Who else should I recruit? Go from there. And then maybe the last one that's probably unconventional is I would say go to therapy, get a counselor, have someone that you work with once a month. Like being an entrepreneur is an incredibly.
Any tips on finding that counselor or that person to talk to? Do you have any?
I would say pick someone at random.
Pick someone at random. Okay, cool.
Like go, so whatever, because I'll tell you what I did. And I was trying to think, okay, who could I possibly find? Okay, I'll do it in two ways. Who could you possibly find, right? And I'm like, I don't know how you pick that. Like, that's really hard. And I'd find lists of, right? If you go on, I don't know, the Yelp equivalent, there's plenty of Google reviews for people and all that. If you just search for a counselor in your local area. And I would say pick somebody and then just switch after 3 months. And basically, if you pick somebody, go to them once. If you kind of hit it off, like keep going to them, and then switch and try somebody else, and you can try that out. Because the reason I say that is we put too much stock into that decision of like, I have to find the right person. And I think the answer is that you actually have to find someone. The other thing that I would say is ask friends. I think you'd be surprised at how many people actually use counseling as a tool and don't talk about it. And so that's what I did, is I asked a couple friends and they made some recommendations, and that's where I started. But I would say if you don't end up getting a recommendation, like just pick somebody and then feel free to rotate through it, because it's more about you than it is about the counselor.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I mean, we're right up to the limit, and that last one's actually really good. I've been thinking about that for a bit. So wrapping it up, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time, man. I've watched ConvertKit for years. I've watched all your interviews on YouTube like a hawk. And so just from this conversation for me, I'm just so thankful for it. I've learned a ton. And I really wanted to get you on here because in the loudness of entrepreneurship that's going on, I feel that you've grown a company so healthily and with just the right way. And I think it almost it's just never put in the spotlight, the wrong stuff's put in the spotlight. So I really wanted to get my audience introduced to you, especially because a lot of them are beginners and just starting to figure things out. And one ways that I made all my first successful business all based around email. So I'm a huge proponent of email. So one thing I want to do is I just want below this video or in the first comment, I wanted to link just a free trial, non-affiliate link to ConvertKit, because I highly recommend it. It's just a great email platform. And then what I also want to try and do is I have a pretty large full-fledged email course, and I'm gonna describe how to do it if you're watching this video, how to get that. But if you go and pick up ConvertKit through the link, I'll describe how that will work. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we'll give you that email course as well. No affiliate link, just a good referral. I just want to also give you some business for your time as well. I appreciate
that. Yeah, and we've built out a landing page and funnel part of the product as well. So
I'll get with you after it, and we'll figure out how that will get together. I'm sure it will be pretty simple since I'm just doing that. And that's it. Is there anything you want to leave it at? I know you got to go like hard at 9. So
I'm actually interviewing a candidate in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's important.
No, I think I think that'll cover it. I just say all of my writing is public. NathanBerry.com. ConvertKit has that free plan now. So if you go to landingpage.new, it'll dive you right into building a landing page for the free plan. It's free for up to 500 subscribers. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, just at Nathan Berry everywhere on the internet.
All right, cool, man. I appreciate your time so much. I'll let you go for that interview. And then I'll leave some closing thoughts for the viewers and stuff in a second, but I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So based on that special that I just offered at the end of the interview and at the beginning of this video, what you need to do is go to this URL right here on ConvertKit. You can sign up for a free trial. You can sign up for whatever you want right there. I think every single person starting a business should have an autoresponder. ConvertKit is incredible. And then what you want to do is your sign up email, send it to this email address right here. Take your ConvertKit sign up email, send it to this email address right here. This email address right here will confirm your account and send you the $500 email marketing course. It really basically breaks down how I built my first multi-million-dollar business. That's it. Now, guys, if you like videos like this, be sure to give Nathan, first off, a big thanks below. And then also, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because I run ads to people that meet that demographic. I can target that in Google Ads. And I hand out a bunch more free courses that cost literally over thousands of dollars if you bought them in the past. I don't sell beginner courses anymore, but they are laying around, and I'll give them to you if you see those ads. So again, guys, what you need to do, go to this landing page here on ConvertKit's website, sign up. This is not an affiliate link. This is just me giving a general suggestion to you, and then send your sign-up email to this email address right here, and it will deliver the course to you. That's it, guys. I'll see you next time I see you.